Hey everyone, it's Sam. I'm really excited to be back, and today I am with Dr. Heather Michelle. She'll be joining me in just a moment, and we're going to be talking all about letters of recommendation. So let me just get her on here. There we go. Hey, there you go.
Hello, Matt.
Hey, hi. I
Hi,
am
friend.
I'm so excited we got time zones figured out.
I know we finally figured it out. It's crazy, but I think we're actually going to make it work this time.
Yay! Yay! So today we're talking all about letters of recommendation. And I don't know about you, but I remember whenever I was an undergrad and having to ask for those was always a little awkward and you don't know really what to say or what should be included in them, how many you should have,
Mhm.
who they should be from. So that's what we're talking about today. And before we jump in, Heather, would you mind sharing about your teaching story?
Sure. I got into teaching through an alternative pathway. I was a Teach for America teacher. I got placed in Houston, Texas. It seems like it's been forever now. In 2001, I taught there for 2 years and then moved to San Diego and taught first and second grade at a charter school for 13 years, got my master's, then my doctorate, did some adjunct work, and now I work at National University as their clinical practice coordinator for the state of California.
That's
So,
amazing. What a cool story.
yeah, I just feel fortunate that I got to have so many different experiences and just learn tons along the way.
Right, right. And it sounds like every experience led to another, led to another. And
Yes.
throughout that experience, probably interviewing for some jobs and asking for letters of recommendation. That is my
Yes.
segue.
Yes, I get a lot of requests. I mean, also, I've asked for several letters of rec myself, but I also because any leadership position you're going to get asked for letters of recommendation. So I do have
Right.
like a specific opinion about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So why is letters of rec or letters of reference something that's near and dear to your heart?
Um, it's near and dear to my heart, or something I think it's important because it is one of the first impressions that your employer is going to see as they decide whether to ask you over for an interview or whether to invite you to be a part of their staff. It's all of that is really important, and so you really want to make sure that. Well, there's just several things.
Go
Should I
for
get
it.
into
You go.
it?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, first and foremost, you want to make sure that the person you're asking is going to give you a positive recommendation. I've had several, I mean, it seems obvious, and maybe you've made some assumptions about the people that you've asked, but I have come across the super awkward situations where an interview has gone really well, and then I go to check out the letters of recommendation or the references, and they don't check out. And I was one step away from hiring that person, and I can only take what I'm hearing um, from the LEC writer and then the letters of recommendation. So it's important that you're actually asking someone that knows and has substantial knowledge about your skill set, who you are, both professionally, maybe a little bit personally, but maybe mostly professionally, and can really vouch for your skills and what you have to offer in terms of that specific position. Which brings me to my next point. My next point is you really want to have alignment between your documents. So, for example, in most jobs, you have a resume or like an online resume or an actual resume that you submit into a school district. You might have some essay questions. But the district is looking for very specific qualifications, and you want there to be alignment between your resume, your your cover letter, and your letters of recommendation. So whatever they're calling out in the specific job position, whatever keywords they're using, whatever specifics they want, you want to make sure that you're using those same keywords in all the documents you're submitting for that job.
Right. I I love that when you're talking about look at the job description. what skills do you have that match that job description, and make sure you're
Yeah.
highlighting that in the resume, in the cover letter, and including that job description to whoever is going to be writing that letter of recommendation for you. Because from getting requests to write letters of recommendation, you get requests for a summer camp or a graduate school or teaching, like a first-year teacher. And so knowing, instead of just writing, hey, can you write me a letter of recommendation? Hey, can you tell me more about this? Because it can be so varied as to why you're writing that letter and how to ask for it as well. So as a new graduate, who are some people that they can be asking for letters of recommendation, remembering that you want one that's a positive professional letter of recommendation?
So some examples of who they could ask for.
Yeah.
Well, I would definitely say like their student teacher supervisor is someone that knows about their skill set specifically in the classroom. You want to ask someone who has seen you in action address challenges and then find solutions to those challenges. Like someone that knows who you are as a teacher. They don't need to know. I mean, pre-service teaching, when you're doing your student teaching, you're learning, but there are going to be instances where things come up and you want to ask someone that has seen you in action. So your student teacher supervisor, any professors you've had for several classes. I think for me, it's hard to write a letter of recommendation if I've only had a student for one class. On the quarter system, that would be 3 months. On the semester system, that would be, 8 to 9 months. 8 to 9 months? 5 months probably?
5 months, yeah.
5 months, sorry. Yeah, and if you don't have a lot of people, like, you might ask your supervisor, you might ask a professor, but then maybe you ask someone that you had a job with previously that may have known you for more than 1 or 2 years, so that you have a variety of like letter of recommendation submissions. So it isn't just people that have known you for a couple months, but here's someone that's known me for a long time. And my past job, it might not be related to teaching, but this person can vouch for areas of like responsibility and resilience and that kind of stuff.
I like that. So a former employer or a current employer, if it's someone who you've worked with over many years, 1 or 2 years, a college supervisor for student teaching, your mentor teacher, your student teacher mentor.
Yes, good idea. That one too.
Should we be asking friends for letters of recommendation or colleagues?
We should not be asking friends. Although sometimes it's nice to get, a good friendly letter. But no, for actual submissions, for applications, you don't want to ask your friends.
Yeah.
You want someone that has a good title, has something behind their name, a leadership person, somebody like that.
Yeah. So whenever we're asking for those letters of recommendation, what is a good strategy to ask in a professional way? Would you be willing to write a letter of recommendation for me? What are some things that we need to include, maybe in an email or in a phone conversation that we're having with somebody, asking them for a letter of recommendation?
I think it's always important to be polite.
Yes.
Accommodating. I think one of the things that you mentioned, Sam, in your post was make sure that you give ample time for the person to write the recommendation letter.
Yes.
So that kind of goes like with the whole, I guess, recommendation letter etiquette. You want to, I think first and foremost, any opportunity you have to network with people in leadership positions is good, because you don't want the first contact that you have with someone to be asking them and requesting a letter of recommendation. So, you have a professor, in all of my classes, I try to develop a personal relationship with my students, and you kind of want to come to the class with that same kind of idea.
That's my cat. He must have joined in on the live. I'm like, no.
So yeah, having that kind of relationship, like
Yeah.
if I don't have any, if the only reference point I have for you is in class, it's going to be hard for me to write that letter of recommendation. So I think, being intentional about developing those relationships, when you reach out to that person, either through on the phone or through email, you also need to be aware that that person probably has a lot on their to-do list, and your letter of recommendation, although
It's important
important,
to you.
it's very important and it's probably urgent in your mind. It's not going to be for the person you're asking for
Right, right.
from. So
I
to
would
be aware
say,
of that.
yeah. And I would, again, give them, like, I would say 2 weeks minimum, a month
Mhm.
would be better.
Mhm.
If you can include the description of the job that you're applying for in that
Yes.
correspondence, and an updated resume is always good to review. If you have a digital portfolio, pop that link in there. So when I'm writing that letter, I can be very informed and know what you've been up to. It might be a year since I've seen you, so I don't know what you've been up to.
Yeah.
So having that information is really helpful when writing that letter. And you might also want to put in there, if they're just asking for references, that's something different. Then you want to like ask for, would I be able to put you down as a reference? And sometimes
Yeah.
that's just like a
Yeah.
name, email, phone number, address type situation, which is fine. Again, include like what you're applying for. So if we get a phone call from someone, we know what it's about. That's always good. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's just a reference, and sometimes it's a letter of recommendation. Would you mind talking about the difference between those two?
Um, well, a letter of recommendation is an actual document that whoever you've asked has to write up. It's going to have specific. It does have a specific structure. It's usually no longer than a page. Um, and I have like a little template that I use when I'm asked.
Nice.
Um, yeah, so that's I always put my contact information on there. I sign it. It is more of an official document.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a reference that you might put on a resume, it kind of serves some of the same purpose. My phone number's on there. I've been called when I do agree to that. I am often called, and it's usually a school administrator reaching out and wants to know very specific things about an applicant and whether they'd be a good fit for that specific institution. And so in both instances, I do have to know a significant amount about the person that I am referencing.
Mm-hmm.
And if the administrator asks me for something, asks me a question and I don't have a clear example or clear information, then I have to say, I can't really speak to that. I don't know that about that specific, the applicant that you're referring to.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of reaffirming the whole idea, you really want to pick people that know about you in a professional sense.
Right.
Because that's what they're going to be speaking to in these documents and on a phone call. So,
Right. So we talked about who to ask, how to ask, what to include in an email to ask for that letter of recommendation. Are there any other tips that you have for our student teachers? I'm thinking there are a lot of student teachers watching this live right now about letters of recommendations or asking for a reference. And maybe, like I always tell my student teachers, maybe try to go for 3 to 5 different letters of recommendations or references that show
mm-hmm.
a variety of work. And maybe
Yes.
start collecting that throughout your college career. So if you've had field experience that was like half a semester or something like that, ask for a recommendation or ask for a
Mm-hmm.
letter. What are some other tips that you have?
Well, I really like that, Sam, because I have quite a few student teachers that chose not to do to not pursue a job right now because of COVID-19. They're like, I'm just going to sit this year out and I'll apply next year.
Mm-hmm.
But what was great about them is I had 2 people do this where they reached out for a letter of recommendation now after they had just exited my class, even though they weren't going to be applying for positions for a couple of years, but it makes it easier for me to recall our relationship and their work and examples of their work than it would have been if they would have contacted me a year from now saying, hey,
Yes.
remember me? Can you write me a letter of recommendation? It's a harder
It's like,
because it
do
would
I?
not be. Yeah. So, I mean, and we do have a lot of students, and we don't, I mean, like any teacher, we have a lot of students, we don't remember everybody's name.
Yeah.
Um, that's happened a couple of times. Um, so I guess just, adding that as advice. I'm trying to think what else. What else?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some other stuff that I put out there about letters of recommendation. Make sure you have their contact information because it just might
You
be
said
like
add
something
their
you put on their
resume.
application.
You said add their, make sure you provide them with your resume so they can speak to your strengths specifically.
Yes.
Um,
We have a question down here from Annie. But don't employers want letters to be more current? So I think she was referring to your example about how a student teacher wanted to wait to teach
yes.
until this coming fall. Could you share a little
Yeah.
more?
Yeah. No, you're totally right, Annie. I would just add to that. I've had teachers send me back the letter of recommendation and say, "Hey, can you change the date?"
Mm.
So I've changed the date. I mean, it's still
Mhm.
relevant based on. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's not super good practice, but I've done that. I mean, it's based on our relationship, and it just
Right.
makes the letter current um, because it's so relevant based on the experience I had.
I would also include some advice when you're asking for that letter of recommendation. Tell them where it's going to be used. So, for example, you're going to put it on your digital portfolio as a tab. Here are my letters of
Oh, yeah.
recommendation. Because if you
Yes.
do that, you're going to want to protect the person's privacy. Maybe just
Yes.
include first name, first name, last, like first letter of your last name, and maybe their role, like teacher, college supervisor, because you don't want
Yeah.
to put like their address, their phone number, their email on your digital portfolio. You can keep that content. Just make sure you let them know
Oh, that's
where
a
it's
great
going to
point.
be,
That's a
because
good point.
there's creepers out there.
No, that's a great point. I did not even think about that, Sam. That's a really good point. Yeah.
Great. So we'd love to open up to questions from all of you joining us today. What questions do you guys have about letters of recommendations, how to ask for them, what they are? I mean, we're pretty open here, so we would love to open up for questions that you guys have regarding letters of recommendations or asking for references. One that came in on my Instagram story was, what if you don't get along with your mentor teacher from student teaching and they're like, do you want a letter of recommendation? How do you approach that?
Mm-mm. No.
I love it. No, just say no.
No,
How do you
don't
say
get a
it
letter of
politely?
recommendation from them.
Yeah.
No, and it happens. That kind of stuff happens. And it might, I mean, there's so many different variables when two people come together to do something that they feel very passionate about. And, that happens a lot. Sometimes your master teacher is not in line with your philosophy, or maybe your philosophy kind of clashes with theirs. If that's the circumstances, I would just not ask them for the letter of recommendation.
But what if they ask you if they want one, if you want one from them? How do you say no politely and professionally?
Oh,
Yeah, that was the question. Like, I don't get along with my mentor teacher, but they asked if I wanted a letter of recommendation.
I think you just let them write it, but
Okay.
you don't use it.
That's how I would have handled it too. Like, let them
Just
go,
let
let
them
them do
write
their
it.
thing, and then you
Yeah,
can choose to use it or not. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a sticky situation. Yeah. Oh, how often are people, like, when in the interview process are letters of recommendation being looked at and reviewed and people are being called? Is it later on in the interview process or pretty early in the interview? Yeah, pretty early or later in the interview process. I'll just stop talking. Sometimes I think
Um,
like I get like too far ahead of my question. Like, Sam, you're talking. I have like this out of body moment, like where I'm talking, but I'm thinking about something like you should probably say this. Like, ah.
no, you're fine. I do the same thing, Sam. Um, let's see. I mean, the way I do it when I'm interviewing people is I look at their resume first, and then I call them in for an interview. And then after that's when I go back. If there's someone I want to hire, then the last step I do is to call the letters of recommendation, or excuse me, call the references or look at their
Yeah.
letters of recommendation.
I think sometimes if it's down between like two or three people, I think sometimes those letters of recommendations and calling the references,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, is where like it hits, you know, like, oh, I should probably look at
Yeah.
those. And Annie's
Yeah.
asking about digital portfolios. Annie, you were speaking my love language when it comes to digital portfolios. That is my jam. So hit me up in DMs after today and I will share with you all about digital portfolios. 3 sites that I recommend would be, they're all free, Google Sites, Wix, or Weebly. You can really make it look professional, and all you have to do is add in the content. So hit me up over in DMs and I'll send you more information about that. That's a great question. Oh, actually, let's talk about digital portfolios. Let's, just riff off of that for a minute.
Sure.
So digital portfolios, yay or nay? Should we have one? Should we not have one? You, to somebody who doesn't look at it, is okay to have one? All those things. Go for it.
I mean, I don't have, I guess, you're the real expert in this area, Sam. I would say the digital portfolios that I have looked at are great and make the candidates stand out for sure. Like
Yeah.
you do stand out, especially in the times that we're teaching in and the expectations that are put on teachers. In the school district that I'm most familiar with, the one that I taught in, it's not like you can submit your link to a digital portfolio. However, you can always put a link in a document, and you can always share your digital portfolio with any school that you have an interest in. It's like as quick as it's so quick for an administrator to click on that link and get a really clear view of who you are. And photographs speak 1,000 words. I mean,
Yeah.
like photographs, having a picture of you, seeing you in action, having access to lesson plan examples, all that kind of stuff that you would put in a digital portfolio is really powerful.
It really is.
So,
It shares your
yeah.
teaching story, and it shows so much your process, your products that you've created, your progress through your teaching candidacy. It really is an
Yeah.
amazing artifact, an amazing piece. Wow, Annie, with another question. Annie, A for the day. Way to go. Should we connect our LinkedIn to our digital portfolios? All right, Annie, I got to be honest. LinkedIn, I don't really feel it. I'm sorry. Maybe other people are getting like good hits off their LinkedIn profiles and making great connections, but I don't think I have like LinkedIn down yet.
Okay.
So go
I
ahead,
have LinkedIn. I can speak to LinkedIn.
please.
Um, I will say LinkedIn. Yeah, I think you should link it. I mean, there's no reason why it's not going to do
It's not going to
anything, or
harm at all.
it's not going to do any harm.
Mm-mm.
My experience LinkedIn has been really positive. I would have to say when I was looking for a couple of different positions and I changed my settings on LinkedIn to kind of reflect that, I got several inquiries, not necessarily from schools because schools don't really interact with LinkedIn, but any organization that's looking to hire someone that has any kind of curriculum development, any kind of teaching experience, but not necessarily in the teaching profession. I got a lot of solicitations through LinkedIn.
Oh, nice.
So that was kind of interesting. It's kind of like not necessarily districts, are clued in through LinkedIn, but there are a lot of institutions and kind of like different organizations that are looking for the skill set of a teacher, and that's where they post and that's where they recruit. So
Nice. Yeah, so I get the advice would be add it to your portfolio because why not?
add it to your portfolio.
And that's really cool, Annie, that they're using it as their business card. That's really cool. Awesome. All right,
Yeah.
Heather, do you have any other tips or strategies for our listeners, our viewers today regarding whatever we talked about? Letters of recommendation. We talked about, what else did we talk about? Digital portfolios, LinkedIn, all the things. Any last minute tips before we head out on our conversation today?
I would just say stick with it. I know looking for a job and all of this process is can be a struggle sometimes, and you can feel a little bit discouraged. But just stick with it. I entered into the profession when there was a huge, actually teacher surplus. There were like all these teachers, and I remember I interviewed at 9 different schools before I got one offer, and that was the offer that was the school that was meant for me. So stick with it.
I interviewed at 12 different schools because I too entered at a surplus, and all those first round interviews, I just kept getting discouraged, and just my confidence would just be like, am I meant to be a teacher? And that last interview, I think I interviewed beginning of August and school started like the third week. And it was like, ah, but it was, you know what? It was meant to be because that was the
Yeah.
best teaching experience that I ever had. Everybody
Yeah. Me
goes through
too.
this. Interviews are hard, but I would say celebrate the small wins along the way. So if you apply to 5 schools today, celebrate that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
That's huge.
Update your
Like
digital
every,
portfolio. Celebrate along the
yeah.
way.
Yeah. And just kind of just piggybacking off of that is like every interview that you do is practice for the next
Yes,
interview. Like you do have to, it takes a while to get your talking points down. It takes a while for you to feel, for you to come across as confident and articulate about what you're trying to communicate. And so it's all part of the process.
it is. It
Yeah.
is. Thank you so much, Heather, for joining
You're
me
welcome,
today.
Sam.
Thanks so
You're
much, guys, for
welcome.
listening. And maybe we'll be back and talk more. Have a
Yay.
great day.
I love that. Take care.
Bye.